What's up, everyone? It's Dave here at Blueberries Games, and I'm getting back to a part of the series. It's been a while. I'm doing a Blues Budget Brews this week. It is my Commander series for budget decks for the 100 card format Commander. This week I am doing Yorvo, Lord of Garenbrig. And no, I wouldn't normally just do this one. This one is actually a request from a customer. This video should have been done last week, but it took me a little time to get the deck together because he doesn't have many synergies that, are easy to work with, so you had to find them. So this week we're going to go over that. This actual video is for the person who has purchased the deck so they can see it, they can see what the synergies are, and they can learn how to play it. So again, it's Yorvo, Lord of Garenbrig. He has 3 green to cast. He's a 0/0 creature. He is a giant noble. When he enters the battlefield, he enters with 4+1/+1 counters on it, so that's pretty good right there. It's a 3 to cast 4/4. The ability that he has is whenever another green creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on him, and then if that creature who entered the battlefield's power is greater, put an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Now, I had to redo this deck twice, and the reason why is because the ability reads differently than I originally thought. So my original thought was that when a creature enters the battlefield, so I started off with Eldrazi. It didn't work because I went back and read it again, and his ability says whenever another green creature enters the battlefield. That took a lot of... It made deck building a little bit harder than it should have been. I have it figured out. I have it done, and I'm going to go over it for the person who bought it and for you guys so you can see that there is a way to take lesser cards and actually make a strategy and a deck out of them. They're not optimized, but they still work. So the other parameter was that the person who's purchasing this was purchasing it for their son, and they're going to be facing mostly the Dragon. So I have to at least point this out that as unfair as the Dragon already was, doing it versus a budget deck is even less fair. I'm going to attempt with what I show you here to take that on and see if I can't. I'm going to have him tell me later whether or not this can actually do it or not. So that's the parameters. It was Yorvo was the selection. He has 2 cards he's going to be adding into the deck later when he gets it. I'm going to give him a complete 100 card deck. He can switch out whatever he wants. From what I understand, one of them is the color of beast or whatever it is that makes it so that your green creatures can be cast as instants. I believe it. I can't remember what he said it was. But the other one was Omnath, the OG one, the mono green one. And I originally asked him if he wanted me to make this based around Omnath, which would be a little easier. And he said no, he wanted Yorvo. So I went ahead and I put together something that would work. So follow me on this one and I'll show you how I can do it. So, as always, I have everything sectioned off in different things. I start with the lands, and with the lands, it's mono green, so there's not a lot of non-basics that you can really throw in here. And as I always do with my budgetary builds, I'll have a section at the end of the video that goes over possible upgrades you can use. So, we start with Myriad Landscape, so you can... there's no mana fixing in a monocolor deck, so it's just thinning your deck at that point. So Myriad Landscape gets 2. Field of Ruin is because if he's facing an Dragon deck, it's going to have a lot of non-basics because it's a 5 color, so you might as well, make it harder for them by having land destruction. Cave of Temptation, we're going to follow a +1/+1 theme and a token creation of green creature theme. So this one, when it can tap to add a mana of any color, it can tap to add a colorless, it doesn't come into play tapped, and then you can sacrifice it to put 2 +1/+1 counters on something. Blighted Woodland also goes and gets lands. Again, we're not looking to mana fix, we're just looking to thin the deck out so you can get better draws. So Yorvo can be a possible Voltron, if you will, just because he can get bigger and bigger and bigger, so you might as well throw a Rogue's Passage, see if you can't throw some commander damage around. Maybe you can sneak a win in, especially against Drago with that. Or the Dragon, sorry. Evolving Wilds, again, more thinning. Same thing with the Terramorphic Expanse. Tranquil Thicket, so if it's later in the game and you don't need, because you don't really need a lot of land to operate this deck, again, it's mono green, so you can just cycle it away, so I put in all 3 of them, all 3 of the cycling lands. Colony Garden enters tapped, but it also enters with a green creature creation, so that is So this land actually creates a token on Yorvo if he's out. And then the rest are all farce. And again, I'll have some small upgrades that you can do for the deck with the land section a little later on. So that's the lands. We're going to go to, because green is the king of ramp, more ways to thin out your deck. Remember, it's a budget. This is a $40 total deck. With 100 cards, getting to a $40 deck, a little bit trickier. It can be done, but that means some things have to suffer. That the land ramp, while it works, it has to be a little bit on the lesser monetary value side. So we start with Reclaim the Wastes. Nissa's Triumph, and in my upgrade section, I actually have a Nissa that could be used in here, so the actual ability, the second part of this, can work. But for now, it just goes and grabs 2 forests. Beneath the Sands, so in case it's later in the game and you don't need the land ramp, you can cycle it away. Beanstalk Giant, I put in every budget deck that is green, just because it serves 2 purposes. It goes and grabs a land, but it also can become, or is, a star creature, which can be pretty big, that the stars are equal to the number of lands you control. It doesn't have to be forest, it's just lands. So it can be a nice big creature later. Natural Connection just goes and gets a land, puts it into play. Map the Wastes actually bolsters while doing it. So bolster is when you cast it, you can choose a creature with the least toughness among creatures you control and put a +1/+1 counter on it, so it fits the theme of the deck. Grow from the Ashes, you can kick, so you can end up going to get 2 basic lands and putting them on the battlefield tapped. And Vastwood Surge. Kick it. So there's a small sub-theme kicker in here, by the way. If you wanted to follow that, if you wanted to chase that, if you could do that as well. And it searches for 2 basic lands and puts them on the battlefield. And then if it was kicked, here's another part of the +1/+1 counter theme, is if it was kicked, you can put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. So it follows the theme. I went with it as much as I could. Alright. Now to the creature section. One of the hardest parts about this was that Yorvo says specifically green and not any creature. So everything that is a creature that creates a creature, I had to make sure created green creatures. If it didn't create green creatures, it helps with +1/+1 counters. So the theme is cohesive. So we start with Thalids. Most of the Thalids do it. I didn't put all the Thalids in here. I only put a couple. But they all create 1/1 green Sapperling tokens. And the Sapperling theme is the main part of this whole deck, but not like you would think. And I'll explain that at the end. So it's a Sapperling theme, token theme, +1/+1 counter theme. Let's just go with it, alright? So it creates a 1, so every third turn it can create a 1/1, making Yorvo bigger. Wildwood Scourge. Now this is the other half of it, which is the +1/+1 counter theme. When it enters the battlefield, it enters with X +1/+1 counters, and then whenever 1 or more other creatures get a +1/+1 counter put on them, I'm sorry, a non-Hydra, and this is the only Hydra in the deck. So whenever another non-Hydra creature gets a +1/+1 counter, you put a +1/+1 counter on him. So he can grow bigger as Yorvo grows bigger. They could be twins. I said Sapperlings was the main creation theme for this part of the deck. Jade Mage creates them for 3, and it's a colon, so you can do it as much as you have the mana for it. You can keep doing it. Thalid Shell Dweller, one of the other Thalids I put in here. It has Defender, but the whole point of him is not to attack. The whole point of him is to have a big butt so he can block things and create 1/1 tokens. Thalid Germinator, again, same thing. He can create every third turn. You just put spore counters on them every turn, and then when there are 3, you can remove them at any time. He has the added ability of sacrificing a Sapperling to make target creature get +1/+1 on the turn. So it's a little bonus. Twin Silk Spider. It's a spider that comes into play with reach and is a 1/2, but he also creates a duplicate of himself. So there's that green creature token creation. The Ephemeyer Sapherd. That's another fungus that when it comes into play, it creates itself a 1/1 green sap token. So again, more Sapperlings. Hornet Nests. So this is where the defending against the Dragon comes in. Hornet Nests is a 0/2 defender, but when he's dealt damage, for each damage he is dealt, you put that many 1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and death touch onto the battlefield. So for every damage he's dealt, you can create a 1/1 basically blocker for dragons. So that's what that's for. Ivy Lane Denizen, continuing the +1/+1 theme. Whenever another green creature, so obviously the synergy there is that this whole thing does nothing but create green creatures. When it enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Every time a green creature enters, you can put a +1/+1 counter on something. Now this guy actually creates infinite loops. I did not use him for an infinite loop here, but he can. Seed Guardian is 4 to cast 3/4. It has reach, and then when it dies, it creates an XX green elemental token, where X is the number of creatures in your graveyard. You're going to have a lot of death in this, especially if you're facing their dragon. Renata also continues the +1/+1 theme, so when, each other creature that you control, even if it doesn't originally come with +1/+1 counters, when it comes into play, each creature now comes into play with an additional one. So if you cast Yorvo, it comes into play with 5 +1/+1 counters. If you cast anything, like, say you cast the Seed Guardian, it comes into play with a +1/+1 counter. That's all that means. So this is just to help forward that theme. Iridescent Horn Beetle. At the beginning of your end step, create a 1/1 green insect creature token for each +1/+1 counter you've put on a creature you control this turn. So this guy literally fits exactly the theme. So he creates 1/1 green creatures, and he works with +1/+1 counters. So it's kind of a no-brainer there. Ant Queen, it's a 5/5. So a 5 for 5/5 actually on curve is pretty good. His ability is to for every 2 you put into him, put a 1/1 green insect token onto the battlefield. So that's why this is in there. Symbiotic Beast. This one, when it dies, you can put 4 1/1 green insect creature tokens on the battlefield. Not as good as when it enters the battlefield it happens, but at least, you know, it has a way to do it. So when it dies, it creates them. Rampaging Balos has the landfall ability, so whenever you play a land, and just keep that in mind, this deck has a combo I'm going to show you at the end that will work very well with this, and you'll see it in a second, or in a little bit. Hornet Queen also does kind of what the other one does. Of course I can't remember the damn name. Hornet Nest. Okay, Hornet Queen. While it looks like it's a lot to cast, what it does is awesome. So it has flying and death touch itself, so that helps against flying creatures, usually dragons. But it also enters the battlefield and creates 4 green of the same thing. It's a 1/1 green insect creature token with flying and death touch. So good defense against anybody who's playing something like their dragon. And then Verdant Force is the last creature in here. Every turn, every upkeep, doesn't matter whose turn it is, you create a 1/1 green sap token. So, as you can see, all the creatures there have a cohesive theme of using, utilizing, or being, you know, something with +1/+1 counters or creating a token. As far as the rest of the deck, I'm going to start with spells. These spells are basically the token creation helpers to help you continue to make Yorvo bigger. So, Chatter the Squirrel makes a 1/1 squirrel token. Now, I want to make a mention of the squirrels, since it's a big thing since Modern Horizons 2 just came out. The first theme of this deck is sap, but you can make a secondary theme of squirrels if you wanted to, because the squirrel token creators create a lot more tokens, but they also monetarily cost a little bit more. So, it also flashes back so you can create 2 off the 1 card. Sap Migration creates 2 tokens, and then if you kick it, it creates 4. Sprouting Renewal is kind of like a utility card of it can create a token or it can destroy an artifact or enchantment, so whatever the situation calls for when you have it in your hand. Carrion Call creates 2 green tokens that have Infect. Infect isn't the main theme here, but it, you know, it can be a partial theme if you needed to. So if you really wanted to, you could add some Proliferate in here, and technically you should with +1/+1 counters. And if one of those guys hits your opponent, you can proliferate or keep hitting with Infect and kill them at 10 counters. Spore Swarm creates 3 sap tokens. Reach of Branches actually comes back from the grave to your hand for every time you put a forest into play. I mean, it's expensive to cast because it's 5, but late in the game, if you have nothing better to do, you can create a 2/5 green creature. And then get it back when you play a land. Bestial Menace does 3 separate tokens. increasing in power. So 1/1/2/2 and a 3/3. So when you cast this, Yorvo can grow bigger. If you have Eye and Denizen out, you can put 3+1/+1 counters on things. Cobra Trap. When you're playing Commander, you're going to have a non-creature permanent that you control destroyed. So and most of the time, this will end up costing 1 green to put out 4 1/1 snakes that are green. How the Night Pack later in the game, since most of your lands are forests, you're going to create a ton of 2/2 green wolves. And that is where that whole secondary option of winning comes in. So Yorvo can be Voltron-esque because he'll grow bigger, but if you wanted to, this deck can certainly go wide, create a lot of tokens, and then swarm your opponent. Against the Ur Dragon, it might even have to be as fast as you can get it done, just because dragons cost a lot. Even with the reduction in cost from the Ur Dragon, you may have to try to do that as quickly as possible to beat your opponent. Night Soul defensively helps to remove 2 creatures in any one graveyard from the game, so you can exile cards from one person's graveyard to create a 1/1 green sap token. So this works great against black, usually, but it can help against everything else. Just realize you can't remove 2 from separate graveyards to get that to work, so you have to be from one graveyard. But it is pretty funny sometimes. Zendikar roll, while it doesn't say landfall, it's a landfall ability. And then whenever a land enters the battlefield, you just create a 2/2 green. There's that green again, elemental token. And then Mimic Vat. So the problem I had was that I had the deck originally making a lot of Eldrazi. I put this in there only because it's whenever anything dies, you exile that card. So that's important. So if you exile a card, say specifically another person's, like your opponent's dragons, you get to create those dragons. They're flying for the most part, and they can help block if you need it. One of the other things that's cool about it is you can do it for one of your own, so that when it either enters the battlefield or dies, you can create the tokens. Because oh no, sorry, my bad. Do not use the ones that die, because this is exile. It does not die then. So you want to do something that comes into play and creates as many tokens as you know. I had things in here that were Eldrazi that created 3 tokens, and it would have been great for that. But unfortunately, they were not green tokens. So that's just one of those things. It helps you. You can utilize your opponent's creatures. So if they have an Eldrazi that happens to drop on the board and it somehow dies, you can actually exile it with the Mimic Vat and then create copies of it. So it's just a fun little card to play with, especially if you're doing token creation. Next part of it I'm going to do is defensively, this deck does have an issue with flying creatures. So when I heard that the opponent that this deck will mostly be going up against was an Ur Dragon deck, I'm like, well, what a handicap. It's a cheap deck. It's already weak to flying. Let's throw it up against one of the best flying, type of decks there is. Okay, how do I defend against that? So this is going to have what I came up with. And if you look at it, I don't usually put that much in defense in any of my decks. That's a lot of defense. So we're going to start with a Hurricane, because it just does damage to flyers. It's effective against it. As long as they're not indestructible, they'll die. Return to Nature destroys an artifact, enchantment, or exiles a card from a graveyard. So nice defense there. It helps get rid of things that may help reduce costs that aren't creatures. Broken Bond, again, an artifact or enchantment destroyer, and then you may put a land from your hand down to the battlefield. Nice help to ramp. Rabid Bite, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. Yorvo should be bigger than your opponent's creatures. It should be able to kill your opponent's creatures with Rabid Bite. Cannabis Transformation is for your opponent's commander if it's on the field, usually, or anything that's really like something indestructible, something that's a pain in the ass. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, so that's great. And then the creature that it enchants loses all its abilities and becomes a green 3/3 elk. So it gets what was his name? It gets I forget the damn name of the planeswalker. Okoed. It gets Okoed. I don't know why they called it Kenner's transformation. It should have been Oko's transformation. Plummet, destroy target creature flying. I mean, come on, really. Crushing Vine, same thing. Or it has the ability to destroy an artifact if you need. And Crushing Canopy does the same thing, but it does it to an enchantment. You can either try an enchantment or a creature with flying. Tornado, destroy a creature with flying, and if for some reason you don't need to destroy a creature with flying, you can cycle it to draw a card. Beast Within destroys anything that is... Oh no, it actually destroys creatures. I thought it was not a creature. Destroy anything, make its owner create a 3/3 green beast token. You can even do it to your own stuff. Just keep that in mind. You can do it to your own if you really wanted to. Destroy a 1/1 token to make a 3/3 token. And of course, Whirlwind. I'm trying to get as much defense against flying creatures, including dragons, as possible. So destroy all creatures with flying. That's what I have defensively here. Alright, next section here. Green doesn't do card draw normally well. Green has a way around it being card draw. All these cards are going to do the same thing. They're going to look at the top X amount of cards in some way, shape, or form, either through scry or through the name of the card. Put a either creature and/or land and/or enchantment and/or, they're all going to have something similar to that. And put it in your hand and then put the rest on the bottom of your library. So this one looks at 3, and you get to get a creature. Track down scry's 3, so you get to look at 3. You get to reveal the card. And if it's a creature card, you can, or land. If it's a creature or a land, you get to draw a card. By the Flourishing looks at 3. You can reveal a permanent from among them, put it in your hand, and put the rest on the bottom, and then gain 3 life. Adventure Awaits looks at 5. You can reveal a creature, and then you can put the revealed creature, the revealed card in your hand, and put the rest on the bottom of your library. If you didn't actually choose a card to do that with, you get to just draw a card. Seek the Wilds, look at the top 4. You reveal a creature or land, put it in your hand, put the rest on the bottom. They're all pretty similar. Inspiring Call, however, is not. Inspiring Call lets you draw a card, and then it's for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it, and those creatures gain indestructible. So if you have 6 creatures on the board with +1/+1 counters, for 3 you can draw 6 and make all those creatures indestructible. One of the better draw cards for green, if you're using a +1/+1 counter theme. Harmonize for 4 just lets you draw 3 cards. Don't understand how this ever became a green card. This is blue written all over it, but whatever. Green got everything lately. An Elemental Bond, whenever a creature you control or whenever a creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. It's one of the ways green used to draw cards. It makes the most sense. I don't know why they gave something like Harmonize to it, but whatever. Alright. Utility and such. Utility basically is the next section. You want to protect your commander from being able to be targeted. This gives it +1/+2 and hexproof. This goes in every deck that if I have enough of these left over, they go into a commander deck because you need to be able to protect your commander. This actually helps with an infinite part of the deck, and I'll explain that later, but it has a landfall ability, so when a land enters the battlefield under control, you can put a, look at that, +1/+1 counter on target creature. So it fits the theme of the deck, or you can gain 2 life if you're low on life. More defense against flying, Gravity Well, so whenever a creature with flying attacks you, it loses flying. And then, to go along with the +1/+1 counter theme, Jiang Yanggu, the Wildcrafter. It has a static ability of each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. It has tapped, add 1 mana of any color, so it turns all things into a Birds of Paradise. And for -1, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. The reason why I said a proliferate idea, sub-theme would work here is because if you can continue putting, if you proliferate and put a thing on here, and then you remove it to put a +1/+1 counter on something, it just keeps going back and forth. You can make it so that you can keep doing it over and over. And each time you do that, you actually gain yourself a Birds of Paradise. So, fits the theme in this deck very well. And the last section for the deck, this is your win cons. So I told you Voltron, I told you this, I told you that. So the go wide theme with Overrun, I was talking about earlier. You can go wide, which means, rush your opponent with all these 1/1 tokens. Cast Overrun, all your creatures get +3/+3 and trample, win the game. Okay? That's one way to do it. Here's another way. I have an infinite combo in this deck. Spore Mount is a 5 to cast 3/3 that whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 green sapling token. Okay? This is where the saps, I told you, were the main theme. I added Life and Limb, where it says all forests and all saplings are also 1/1 green sapling creature tokens and forests. So the combo is whenever you play a land with life and limb out, it's a land and a creature. Spore Mount says whenever a land enters the battlefield, create a creature. So it's an infinite combo. However, a lot of people don't realize this, but this is an infinite combo that doesn't ever end. It creates a draw. It creates a draw because you can't stop the loop. I had to actually restructure the deck because I had to figure out how do I stop the loop on a budget. So I went and looked at all the altars and all the things that help you in green to sacrifice a creature, and all of them cost monetarily more than the deck. Okay? Phyrexian altar costs like $40. More than, it's basically the cost of the deck. It might even be more than that. It might have been 70 actually. Even an Ashnod's altar is $12 for an uncommon. So, you know, it kind of threw the deck off. So I had to come up with the cheapest way possible. Enter Bubbling Cauldron. So it's a 2 to cast artifact. It says pay 1, tap it, and sacrifice a creature, and you gain 4 life. I mean, as far as utility goes, it helps you keep it alive, even if it wasn't for the combo. So the way you do it is you just choose however many 1/1s that you want to put into play, and then you just activate the Bubbling Cauldron, say at a certain number, and sacrifice the Spore Mound so that it stops the loop. Otherwise, the game ends in a draw. So keep that in mind. You have to make sure that you have the Bubbling Cauldron before you lay down these 2 cards, or else you're going to end the game in a draw. Alright? There are other ways to do that, and I'll go over that. And that's in the upgrade section. But let's just, you know, focus on this. So, remember that when I told you earlier, you know, Retreat to Kazandu has infinite. Think about this. If you have Ivy Lane Denizen, you have Retreat to Kazandu, and these 2 out, you play a land, and now you've got an infinite loop of putting +1/+1 counters on something with Retreat to Kazandu, getting infinite life, creating infinite creatures. You know, you could create, say, just for the fun of it, always name like 1,000. So then at the end of the day, you're going to have 1,000 creatures that gained you either 2,000 life, or each got 1,000 +1/+1 counters. And Yorvo is now a fucking, 1,003, 1,003. I think you got the win there, if you have a Rogue's Passage. So that's a couple of the ways you can go ahead and win with the deck. There are other little hidden secrets in there. When you play the deck, you'll see some stuff in there, but for the most part, that's how you play this deck. So, alright. Now, as far as the upgrade section, now this is actually for somebody specifically, and if you're listening, here are some of the upgrades I would go with. Are you ready? For lands, for draw, because that's where this is weak, you go with Archer Veraska, Bonders, Enclave, or a War Room. Those 3 cards, because green is weak in card draw, they are lands that let you do that. You can do a little bit of ramp on the land, so you can go ahead and get better, you know, get the lands you want. Fabled Passage and Prismatic Vista are upgrades to the Terramorphic Expanse style cards. And then, if you want to be really fun, go with Thawing Glaciers. It goes and grabs a basic land almost every turn. For land destruction, so that you can deal with people who are using not monocolored decks. You can go with a Strip Mine, a Wasteland, or a Dust Bowl. Dust Bowl is reusable all the time, and you're not really going to need as many lands as you have. If you want some utility, Karn's Bastion has the Proliferate I was talking about. Ornery Fastwood actually gives every creature that's, I believe, green that enters the battlefield this turn +1/+1 counters. So it fits the theme very well. And then Yavimaya Hollow helps you regenerate those creatures. If you want some extreme ramp, you can go with a Gaia's Cradle and a Nykthos Shrine to the Nyx. Or even that new card that they just came out with in Modern Horizons 2, Yavimaya Cradle of Growth, so that you can make everything a forest on your side, so at least it taps for the green you need. And a little tech for you, you could also do this. You could make all of your forests snow-covered forests, and use scrying sheets, so that you can kind of try to draw them and get them into your hand as fast as possible. So that's just a couple of the lands that you can choose. For ramp, obviously I chose the budget versions, but the non-budget versions are as follows. You've got Nature's Lure, 3 Visits, and Rampant Growth. And then you've also got things like Cultivate, Far Wanderings, and Primal Growth. You know, those all can help you ramp a little quicker than what I have here, but not much. Just to understand, it wasn't really that much of an upgrade, but it's still an upgrade. And those cost monetarily, for some reason, way more than the other stuff. Some creatures that you could add. So, you could go with, I said earlier, the squirrel theme. So when you have squirrel theme and you have the guys who create the squirrels, you have things like Deep Forest Hermit, a Deranged Hermit, and a Thelonite Hermit, and they all create 4 tokens at a time, and they're all green. So that's one option. You could go to the landfall option, and this is where an infinite combo can happen. If you add Lotus Cobra in with the infinite combo I already have in there, you can have infinite mana. You can add that to it. Avenger of Zendikar helps you create tokens, and then Scooch Swarm is obviously the king of all creation of tokens. We've seen that now. The landfall theme, you could go with the 2 tirelesses, which is Tireless Provisioner, which is new, and Tireless Tracker. They're not really landfall, but they don't say landfall, but they're landfall. And then Evolution Sage also helps you proliferate when you play a land. Another combo that you could use that would be infinite would be Malira Sylvok Outcast. Now, I understand that that's kind of counterintuitive to this deck because it doesn't allow things to come into play with counters. But you can do that with a Woodfall Primus, and then you can basically destroy every non-creature on the board that includes lands. Because if you use a sack outlet, which you should have one, if you're using that. So it dies, it comes back into play because its ability puts a -1/-1 counter on it and returns it to the battlefield. And Malira doesn't allow counters to be put on, so it just keeps dying, coming into play when you sack it, and then you could basically do infinite mana out of that. You could do infinite anything out of that. Infinite mill, because there's one, the Phyrexian, is it Phyrexian Altar, or one of them is. And you can mill your opponent's library. I mean, there's so much stuff you can do there. Counterintuitive, if you take the +1/+1 counters out of it, and you just want to go for that combo, you can do that. And then you could do a Craterhoof Behemoth for the go wide scenario that you're looking for. You could do... I'm going to mention singly on the creature side of Vorinclex. The new Vorinclex lets you, double your tokens and double your counters or what have you. It's going to send me into the next section of enchantments that you could do, which are the doublers, which is doubling... Branching Evolution, doubling Season Parallel Lives. And then Primal Vigor also is a doubler. So they all go together. So the Vorinclex, the Branching Evolution, Doubling Season Parallel Lives, and Primal Vigor all go together in a deck like this. There's Growing Rites of Illimac. That actually helps you search for a creature and becomes a Guy's Cradle. Always good for ramp and for finding what you need. Path of Discovery helps you with the +1/+1 counter theme. It helps get you land into your hand. It does basically what this deck wants to do. Guardian Project is my favorite green card for Commander because the whole theory of Guardian Project is it lets you draw a card if you play something that you don't have copies of. Well, Commander only has 1 copy of everything, so I love it. Sylvan Library and Abundance together as the combo. If you haven't seen that one yet, that helps you, basically get 3 cards to turn into your hand. Asceticism helps you protect all of your creatures by giving all hexproof. Burgeoning helps you get lands into play faster. Concordant Crossroads gives all your creatures haste. It's one of the few green cards that does that, and that would enable a whole. Crypt of the Thrite lets all of your tokens create. It acts like the Planeswalker I had in the deck already, where it makes them all tap for a color mana of any color, so you can ramp faster with that. Defense of the Heart lets you go grab 2 cards from your library and put them into play. That could be really dangerous, especially in green. Oh, look, Craterhoof and with the End-Raise Forerunners, and now your creatures are a million. And then Epic Struggle, because with all the tokens you're creating and all the stuff that you can do here as far as creating infinite creatures, it says at the beginning of your upkeep you win the game if you have 20 or more creatures, so that's a natural. I mean, it just pretty much seals the deal. For some spells that I would do, you've got tutors like Worldly Tutor, Green Sun's Zenith, and Finale of Devastation. That Finale actually acts as both a finisher and a searcher. You've got, let me see what else you got here. Some finishers, let's see. Return of the Wild Speaker. Overwhelm and Overwhelming Stampede all are like overrun, so they buff your creatures, give them trample, and then you just token swarm. Some draw cards for spells. You got Rich Cards Expertise, Shamanic Revelation, and then Soul's Majesty all help you draw into what you need in your deck, especially in green because it doesn't really have a lot. And then, of course, you got token creation, which is, as the rest of it goes, the most boring part of it is more token creation. Beacon of Creation, Azorius Predation, and Plain White Celebration. Obviously, everything there has to have a TION at the end. Some artifacts you can consider. The Ozolith, because you're putting counters, different kind of counters on everything. You could just get them, if something dies with counters on it, it goes on the Ozolith. And then, at the beginning of your next upkeep, it goes onto a creature. I think either that comes into play or you can choose it. You got the Great Henge, because every green deck should have the Great Henge in it, because it's pretty much just the best utility in all of Magic for green. And Lifecrafter's Bestiary helps you draw cards or scry or whatever have you, and it works in a deck that has a lot of creatures come into play. Emerald Medallion helps reduce the cost of your stuff by 1 colorless, which every monocolor deck should have a medallion in it. Commander's Plate is just, it's one of those auto-includes in almost every deck now that it's been created or been made. And Shadow Spear helps to fight off your opponent's hexproof creatures, and it gives usually your commander a small buff. Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots also do the same thing as the Mask of Avacyn. And Whisper Silk Cloak, I have starred here because not only does it protect your commander, because that's what you're going to do with it, but it makes it unblockable. And what does that mean when you're viewing a commander that can be at 21-21? It means you win the game. Some walkers I mentioned earlier that there are some walkers that you could add in here. The Nisses. So you've got Nissa, who shakes the world, helps you get your lands into play, helps you ramp pretty much. Vivian, Champion of the Wilds, and Vivian, Monsters Advocate, make all your stuff, all your creatures basically become flash creatures. Always good for green. You've got Nissa, Voice of Zendikar, Frailist, Lano's Fury, and Garruk Wildspeaker. All create tokens and do something great with them. For instance, Nissa, Voice of Zendikar puts +1/+1 counters on all your creatures. Fits the theme of the deck. I believe Garruk Wildspeaker, off the top of my head, I believe it also overruns. It gives all your creatures +3/+3 and trample. So fits great for this kind of a deck as well. And it could, you can look at all of them up, and everything that I tell you, you can always double check on. I use MTG Familiar because I have an Android. You can go onto the Gatherer and just put in parameters of +1/+1 counters. I don't know, whatever you want to do. If you want to do something different with the deck, you can go ahead and look it up there. The win cons I gave you were the Life and Limb with Spore Mount. It creates the infinite tokens, and then you can add various different things. So you've got infinite mana with the Lotus Cobra, like I mentioned. You've got infinite +1/+1 counters with End Life with the Retreat to Kazandu that I mentioned. You've got the Commander damage because he's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger with the Overrun stuff. It just goes on and on. So that's how you would go ahead, and that's the upgrades I would choose. If you wanted to upgrade it slowly, you can do it that way. I don't know what the owner of this deck has as far as his collection goes, but those are the things that I would suggest. It doesn't have to be done. The deck will function the way it is sitting. Whether or not it'll beat the Ur-Dragon, I hope so. So, anyway, hope you enjoyed what you watched. To the person who did purchase this deck, I hope that it gave you some kind of insight on how to use the deck. Anybody who didn't, if you want to copy this deck, I don't know if I can do it again. I mean, I could. I'd have to find another Yorvo. I only had 1 copy, but, I mean, if you want it, hey, it'll be for sale. I'll make another copy of it. As much as it was a pain in the butt to actually initially make the deck, now that I've seen how I did it, I can do it again. So, anyway, that is my time for the week. Please do me the favor. Like, subscribe, and share. This is going up earlier than other videos where I said I probably had like 300 or just hit the 300 mark on my subscribers. Actually, as of this video, going up earlier than the rest. I hit 306. So keep it coming. I'm trying to get to the 500 mark. That would be great. And I'll give away one of the budget battle brew decks that I make for somebody. I do have a code to give away to somebody. Nobody has decided they wanted a code, and if you don't want a code, that's fine. I have a Moto code or MTGO code, and I believe I have 1 arena code or 2 arena codes. I hit the 300 mark, so I thank you all for that. Other than that, other than that, that's my time for the week. I want to thank you for watching. Please do remember to like, subscribe, share. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, or concerns, I would please, feel free to contact me through the Facebook page. I just set that up this yesterday to start selling the decks through there because I don't know what happened with the marketplace on Facebook, but they screwed up and they can't verify my tax information, so they can't allow me to ship. I don't know. You could contact me through there. You'll also start to see my store come to shape there as far as what I sell between my mystery packs and all my decks. And you know, I'll be more than happy to go over anything you want, especially with suggestions. I want some interaction. I kind of like to create a community here. You know, I'm not a hard person to talk to. I actually love talking Magic. It's about all I do, and you know, it annoys the shit out of my girlfriend. But whatever. It's all I do all day anyway. I remember I am retired medically. You know, I have the multiple sclerosis, and it kind of affects me, especially in the summertime. It's been hot lately, so I ramble like I am now, and I kind of just sit there and don't do nothing because it hurts. So anyway, there's the contact information. If you have any questions or anything like that, go ahead. Like, subscribe, share, share like I ask all the time. It helps with the metrics. And other than that, enjoy the rest of your week. I will see you all next week.